The House committee investigating the deadly Capitol riot has issued new subpoenas to several high-profile allies of former President Trump. The subpoenas include several top-level members of Mr. Trump's 2020 re-election campaign, along with individuals who worked to spread misinformation about the election in an effort to overturn its results. The latest action suggests the committee is looking to connect promotion of false conspiracies about the election to the deadly assault on the Capitol. CBS News' Natalie Brand has more.
The House committee investigating the January 6th assault on the U.S. Capitol has subpoenaed several top-level members of the 2020 Trump re-election campaign. They include former campaign manager Bill Stepien, senior advisor Jason Miller, and executive assistant Angela McCallum. Also on the list, the former president's attorney John Eastman, who incorrectly advised that then Vice President Pence had the authority to overturn the election results, according to the Washington Post. Former National Security Advisor Michael Flynn was also subpoenaed, in addition to Bernard Kerik, an associate of Rudy Giuliani. The former New York City Police Commissioner is demanding an apology. He says the committee chose to, quote, publicly defame him. The House Select Committee is looking into reports that some of the former president's campaign aides set up a so-called war room in a D.C. hotel in an effort to overturn the 2020 election. Congressman Adam Schiff, who sits on the panel, has said anyone who defies subpoenas could face severe consequences.
Whatever penalties are necessary to ensure compliance. Depends on the person, but it could mean jail time, yes.
The House has already held former advisor Steve Bannon in criminal contempt, a case that's now in the hands of the Department of Justice. Attorney General Merrick Garland said there's an ongoing examination of the facts and the law. There's a separate legal fight launched by the former president over White House records leading up to January 6th. Mr. Trump has sued to keep them private, citing executive privilege. If a federal judge does not step in, the records could be released later this week. Natalie Brand, CBS News, Washington.
CBS News congressional correspondent Nikole Killion joins us now for more on this. Hi, Nikole. So what exactly is the House committee hoping to learn from these 6 former members of the Trump 2020 re-election committee?
Well, again, what they're hoping to learn from all of these individuals that they have subpoenaed, these were either individuals who had close contact with the former president, worked with the former president, may have been involved in meetings or calls with the former president. So it's really just trying to get behind the scenes to see what was being discussed, what role, if any of these individuals may have played in the run-up to January 6th. So in the case of, for instance, Bill Stepien, Jason Miller, those are 2 officials who worked closely with the former president on his re-election campaign. Miller serving as a senior spokesperson to the former president as well as an advisor. You also have individuals on there who were subpoenaed like John Eastman, who was this legal scholar or pundit who basically gave the president a lot of erroneous advice and drafted these erroneous memos about ways to challenge the election. Michael Flynn, for instance, who we know has been involved in legal problems in the past. He also was involved in some meetings that involved, discussing different scenarios and strategies as far as challenging the election, whether that was seizing voting machines and the like. So for all of those reasons and all of these various individuals and their roles, the committee wants to hear from them to find out what they know.
And Nikole, former President Trump, as you know, instructed some of his former staff to not comply with this investigation. Does the committee expect anyone to cooperate with these subpoenas, especially as they await to see what will happen with Steve Bannon, who was found in criminal contempt of Congress after failing to comply?
Well, the committee continues to say that various individuals have been engaging with the committee, but in instances where that doesn't seem to be the case, that's when you're seeing these subpoenas. And so, again, we will have to wait and see if these individuals, in fact, do comply. Again, some individuals respond by engaging with the committee. Others have challenged the committee, as we saw in the case of Steve Bannon. So I think time will tell as far as the level of cooperation they may get from these specific individuals going forward.
And Nikole, could we see the committee subpoena the former president himself during this investigation?
Many committee members have been asked that, and we have asked many committee members that as well. And usually their response to that is, they're not necessarily ready to go that route just yet. Right now, they really want to get to some of these individuals, again, who may have been more engaged and involved in the planning, and, to the extent that they can glean information from these individuals, then that will inform their decision going forward as to whether it merits issuing a subpoena for the president. But some members have made clear they are concerned that that could turn into a bit of a circus, if you will, and so they feel at this point they've had more than 150 or around 150 people who have been cooperating with the committee, so they feel that they are on track, they are on target as far as getting some, if not most, of the information that they need. Not to mention, they have a bunch of document requests that they have also submitted, and from that standpoint, they expect to glean information from that as well. So to be continued, but
Right.
for now, nothing seems imminent as far as the former president is concerned.
The investigation is ongoing. All right. Well, Nikole Killion on Capitol Hill, thank you.
You bet.